Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Severe Takeaways here on the SevereMMA YouTube page. I am your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, E. Spencer Kite, joined as always by the young king, Harry Powell, here to discuss UFC Las Vegas, which went down Saturday at the Theater at Virgin Hotels, formerly The Joint at Hard Rock Hotels and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, headlined by Merab Dvalishvili, getting a unanimous decision win over Petr Yan. And we will dive right in because, good Sir Powell, you said to me, boyo, that wasn't really a 50-45 in my books. That was closer than that. So I will let you jump in.
So I'll start by saying I'm certainly not questioning the scorecards, in that I'm not saying that Merab didn't win every round. I just think when you opt from an optics perspective, when you look at a 50-45, especially when it's over 5 rounds, even if you look at a 30-27, a lot of the times people are like, oh, that was a one-sided drubbing, right? Or that was a one-sided fight. I'm not sure that that's the answer here. I feel like there are rounds, portions of rounds, moments, individual exchanges in that fight that shine Petr Yan in an incredible light. And I think it's very fair to say that Merab won the fight. I think he did far more. And he has such an interesting and effective style, a unique style, actually, because so much of his fighting is isometric holds and isometric movements, but he manages to keep cardio and pace throughout 25 minutes, which is an insane achievement. But I think Yan runs with him, right? And the cardio is something that we've not really questioned from Petr Yan. The ability to go is not something we've questioned from Petr Yan. But you would expect a fighter, as they move deeper into those 25 minutes, that as Merab goes and shoots for those takedowns and looks for those single legs and drops you to a hip, that fighters start to wilt a little bit and they start to accept those positions a little more. As we got into those later rounds,
didn't happen.
Yan was making the reads to start countering those takedowns on Merab. Now, it doesn't hit any counters, but what we saw from Volkanovski, and I think one of the really interesting wrinkles in this is I was watching the fight with half an eye to be like, okay, how do you beat this dude? Like, how do you beat this dude? And I think Yan shows you how you beat that dude. There's just a couple of things that Yan didn't do as well, and there were a couple of things Merab did so well that caused Yan to get away from his game. And I'm just gonna go all over the place, but I'll go like. The first thing that caused Yan huge problems wasn't the pace necessarily, wasn't the takedowns, wasn't the whatever. Merab landed a couple of really solid low kicks to Yan's left leg and caused him to switch stances. Now, that switch was fine for a little while because Yan, as we know, is quite multifaceted and can fight from both stances relatively well. But then it was either an elbow or a headbutt, and it was very difficult to see from the camera angle in the third, I think it was, that closed up Yan's right eye. And well, now Yan had to make some decisions. And those decisions were that Merab was landing really well with the jab, and Yan couldn't see it, standing southpaw. And so he had to choose whether he was going to go back to orthodox and work from a slightly maimed leg, whether he stays southpaw and does a Justin Gaethje, which is if he hits me, he's in range type deal.
Right. I can't quite see him because this eye is closed. But if he's able to touch me, I should be able to touch him.
Right. And he oscillated quite nicely between those two things. But you get to see some of as the rounds move on. And I think round one, and maybe we can go through the rounds now and we can talk about why I think they're a little bit closer than whatever. Round one feels to me, at least the first 30 seconds, Jan's just a touch shell-shocked. Just a touch. I think he knew what was coming, but until you're...
It's another thing to be... Yeah. I think Merab's going to... has that effect on a lot of people and will continue to. Because it's... Yeah. It's one thing to know, okay, this guy's going to, he tried 2 takedowns in the first minute. You knew that was going to happen. I said it during the week. This guy's going to come across and shoot within 30 seconds, and you have to be prepared. But it's another thing when it's live and you feel it, and you feel a little bit of the strength, and you see a little bit of the quickness, and you go, I'm in for a long night.
And I think Jan, we talked about this on the preview show. Jan is somebody that likes to take the first round to make some reads. And I do think he did that. Right? I do think he did that. We saw him make some adjustments. We saw him start to move his head and roll under shots. And there was one point where he does take Merab down, or he trips him with that catching of the kick, and he times the Amanda Nunes on Chris Cyborg low kick really, really, really nicely. And he was looking for that, and he saw that, and he made reads for that. He made reads for sometimes when Merab was coming in with the right hand, he would counter with the left down the pipe with a head movement, and all this sort of really nice stuff. But he was on the ground in 12 seconds. 12. I don't think even Piotr Jan expects that sort of intensity out of the gate. If you watch even the hard rounds between sparring partners, they're not that intense. As in, you may, the first 10 seconds of most fights, you're lucky to catch any strike exchanges, anything, even a couple of low kicks, right? So in 12 seconds to find yourself already on the ground fighting for takedowns, that's just, I mean, that shows you the level of work that Merab has. And I think the things that glow to me throughout these 5 rounds is Merab's ability to fight in the transitions. In that sometimes he uses single legs, or he uses the shots as an attack, as a setup to shots, as a setup to punches. And that is something we haven't seen used at this sort of level before, where he'll grab a single knowing that you now have a dilemma. And that dilemma is, do you defend the takedown, or do you defend knowing that he's going to throw shots at you? Well, the answer is you always defend the thing that's immediately available to you, and that's the takedown. And so as you defend the takedown, he's like, no problem. I'll just smash you in the face now.
Right.
The moment you defend well enough, both, he just drives, keeps wrestling. Keeps wrestling, keeps wrestling, keeps wrestling. Now, I'm just going to move to my notes here. So I put at the very, very start of round 2. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. Jan's had the round. Jan's done the adjustments. He's been a bit shell-shocked. He's had a bit of a ragdolling in that first round. I saw some people score that first round to Jan.
Yep.
The second is he kind of just gets mauled a little bit at the start. Lots of takedowns. And again, the reason why I think this was a closer fight than 50-45 is because the takedown style of Merab doesn't score. That not big, impactful slams.
Right.
He's not suplexing him.
He hustles you to the ground.
You
get back up.
Yep.
A scramble is created. There's not a lot of the control you and start accumulating damage. It's just designed to make you work.
Right. 100%. And he's in a position where he's covering hips, but not super, super glue. He's getting to back body locks, but he's not squeezing and holding and making sure you don't escape from those positions. He's just working. Like he's just working. I've got here as my point here. This is gorgeous from Merab. He throws and lands a shot to the nose. The hands come together and he drives immediately on a clean double because there's just abundant dilemmas. And that I think is really the crux to his game, is just abundant dilemmas. He is always
you are constantly forced to react to him.
Mm-hmm.
You get no time. That was the thing to me. I agree with your premise that this is much closer than when you see a 50-45. And I do think you could score that first round for Piotr Jan. I think there are points along the way where, as I'm sure you will get to, he has success. But the thing that is so effective about Merab, even in his lack of effectiveness within the moments of how we necessarily think of these things, is that you're just constantly on the defensive. He doesn't give you any time to set up. There's no real opportunity for you to get into your game the way you want to, because it's just in your face for every second of every round. And if he's not looking for a takedown, he's bashing your lead leg, or he's throwing with some power. He's improved his striking over the years. He's thrown with some power. He's just constantly active. And it's a thing we talk about a lot with athletes. Just be active. There's value in being active and just being out there and putting out a low kick, putting out a jab, getting a read, looking at a level change. And Merab has just been like, cool, this is the thing I can do that works into my lack of fundamental striking, big power, any of those things, is I can just be active. And Petr Yan's like, God, can I get 30 seconds where this guy just isn't doing something so I can start?
Yes. It's and this is, I think, one of the interesting methods to beat him, right? So the interesting methods, like one of the notes I've put here is, I really wonder, I'd love to watch Aljo and Merab's rounds, because what Merab does do is he does give you opportunities to grapple. And what I mean by grapple is hunt for positions that aren't 4 points or back body locked or up against the fence or whatever. He gives you those opportunities. He gives you the opportunity to scramble with him. And Petr Yan won a number of those scrambles. Well, if you win a number of those scrambles and you have somebody like Aljamain Sterling who could just jump on your back and you're not getting rid of it, what happens then?
Right.
Like, what happens if you have a really, really solid back attacker like Aljamain Sterling, or a really solid, not a leg locker, but, you know, somebody that can really latch onto things and keep you in positions for significant.
It's why the Ricky Simone fight early in his career was very competitive and very interesting, because Ricky, as much as he is a wrestler as well, happy to get into actual grappling exchanges and look to take your back, look to scramble into control positions for himself, very comfortable on the mat, where most of these guys that have fought him have just been like, get him off me.
Right. And that's why I wonder how those Aljamain Sterling go. And equally, the big equalizer, if you're fighting Merab, has to be power. And that's, I think, where Petr Yan fell. Because there were lots of moments when he slips gorgeously, lands beautiful, clean shots, whether it's hooks, whether it's fadeaway jabs, whether it's fadeaway right hands, body kicks, all of this stuff. And if it doesn't cause Merab to respect you, it doesn't matter. You have to have something to sway him. Now, I think that there are 3 parts to how you beat Merab Dvalishvili. The first one,
let's go,
is having an ability to, when you scramble, Jesus, that's grapple and scramble all in one. When you scramble, having an ability to hunt submission-based positions.
Yes.
Like back, like belly down, back mount. These sorts of positions, that's the first key. Because you're then saying to him, you have to be so careful when you enter takedowns on me, because I am going to have an ability to win this exchange. When you're in a clinch situation, one of the ways that we talk about winning the clinch situation is, as you disengage from the clinch, it's whoever lands hardest and last, right? Leon Edwards, Gunnar Nelson is the example I'll always use. So that's the first key. The second key is being able to do exactly what Petr Yan did. One, have the cardio to run with Merab Dvalishvili, but also have the ability, the insane dexterity and balance to stay on your feet for a number of those exchanges and to be able to defend yourself on the follow-up. The third is hitting power. Because Merab, you're right, his striking has improved leaps and bounds, but he's hittable.
100%.
Absolutely hittable, and got hit a lot in that fight. And so if you have a striker who has the ability to strike going backwards, like if you put Wonderboy Thompson, early Wonderboy Thompson,
right,
into a
back up as you're charging forward and make you pay. So
yeah,
we will get into names and next and things like that. But even myself watching it, So the thing I will change maybe a little bit, or not even change, but power certainly is a big factor. But there's not a lot of power at bantamweight. You don't have a bunch of big hitters. Sean O'Malley, big hitter, has that shot power. The thing I was thinking about throughout the fight, watching it, was more so than power, the people that are willing to A, take risks, and B, punish you in those spots as you're talking about. And the guy that jumped to mind is Corey Sandhagen, because he will take those flying knee attempts. You will get inside and he will smash you with elbows because he's got a little bit of length and he's got a little bit of limberness and fluidity to his body and his movements and the things he does. And he does have that scrambling ability where if you're not going to keep me on the ground, I'm happy to wrestle through and scramble. And if you leave it, I'll take your back. And if you give me your neck, I'll take your neck and I'll attack and I'll kick you on the way up and I'll knee you on the way up and I'll elbow you on the way up. And that to me was the little piece that was missing with Petr Yan, is that Merab is a guy that I don't think you can be technical and beat. You can't just be a fundamental, perfectly sound technical. I mean, you probably could. There's certainly somebody, but the pressure and the pace, to me, where Petr Yan missed was there wasn't any points where it was, I know this guy's coming, so I have to do something different. I have to throw that unexpected, not properly set up flying knee. I have to throw that knee up the middle, or that, I mean, it's hard to throw kicks up the middle because Merab's just going to catch him and go. But you got to start banging elbows when he is coming inside and look to cut him and look to lump him up. And there just wasn't enough of that. And it's going to be hard to do it.
It's going to be hard to do it. I think so. The person that beats Merab Dvalishvili, Merab's already beaten if it was 6 years ago. Jose Aldo is the man that beats Merab Dvalishvili 6 years ago, right? I wonder, and this is just an interesting name to me, an interesting stylistic matchup, is the Chito Vera fight. Because we have big power, right? Big hittable power. He is a guy that will happily play close guard in MMA, and not just play close guard, will search for close guard.
Attack from, yeah.
MMA. And he uses big elbows, big strikes when he gets to close guard. So if I'm Merab, and this is one interesting philosophical sort of psychological thing I think about with Merab. Merab is used to getting 4, 5, 6 entries to takedowns around, right? What about if you're somebody like Chito Vera and he takes you down once and you keep him there for a round? What about if you pull him down, or you're like, okay, he's getting me down, cool, I'm going to jump close guard. And as I jump close guard, I'm the one forcing the action to be there.
I 100% think that's part of it. And we'll dive into the next, as we are going to try to do here a little more often, do some full-on matchmaking throughout the card for winners, for losers, projecting sort of where these people can go. I have the Chito Vera, Corey Sandhagen winner as the next opponent. I think Sean O'Malley has done enough to merit just hanging out. Just wait and see what happens with Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo. Look, you can make an argument that he hasn't and he should have to fight, but I think the UFC is going to just leave him there to face the winner of this fight somewhere in, ideally for them, August, September in Las Vegas. I just think timeline works out. The winner of that fight still, to me, feels like somebody that needs that one more in that top tier to get all the way into championship contention. Merab has made no bones about, I'll keep fighting, give me whoever. So it's not like he's going to sit there and be like, nope, not interested. And so it's 2 weeks away. We like the dynamic of either of those guys against Merab because of the things they bring. That feels like another main event somewhere down the line this summer.
look, I have no problem with it. I have the only thing I'll make contention of is we're saying we think Sean O'Malley has done enough. Well, what Sean O'Malley did to do enough is to beat Petr Yan over 3 rounds.
I agree.
Merab just goes out and fucking 50-45s him, however close that fight was. 50-45s him over 5 rounds. Well, if that's enough. I
don't Merab has certainly done enough.
Yeah.
But the position he has put himself in.
Sure. He's put himself on an island.
So if you want to do Merab Sean O'Malley, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Sean O'Malley accepts that fight.
Not unless there's a belt on the line, no.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's look. I'm interested in Corey Sandhagen. I'm interested because he's one of the more cerebral fighters. He's a fighter I absolutely look toward when I really enjoy his style of fighting. Somebody I put a lot of time and have a lot of time for. The range is tough, though. The range is tough when you have a Merab who likes to shoot for singles the way that he does. He's happy to go low single. He's happy to go ankle pick. He's happy to barrel on through stuff. It's tough. And Merab isn't one of these guys that dips his head too much when he enters for singles. So,
no, he stays straight up and he's just kind of grabbing. He's snatch singles more than
he goes
for doubles
The thing that he did so well against Petr Yan was he throws an overhand something with the hope that it either lands or he gets to the far shoulder, and then he scoops the single with the other leg at the same time. His head is almost chest level all the time. And so the flying knees are going to be rough enough to find and time. Or, whatever it is that Corey Sandhagen decides to come with. But I like both of those guys. I don't mind which one you throw in there. Because in a way, Merab could be like a little bit golden, like a golden egg for the 135-pound division right now. If it's true that win or lose, Aljo will go up to 145. I don't know if it is true. We're going to have to see what happens. It's whatever. If he does, and I'm Merab, I just wait, bro. I don't give a shit. If Aljo said to him, look, just let me do this one, get out of the way, and then whatever happens, you can have the next one, fine.
Right.
Fine. But if Aljo's like, look, I got to get this money, I got to do whatever. There's a contract clause in here. If I lose to Henry, then we're going to do whatever. You got to take a fight. You got to feed your family at the end of the day. So, yeah, I have no problem with either of those. And it could be one of those guys where if Merab is happy to keep fighting and Aljo's going to stay as the champion, then you have a guy who is consistently going to churn you out title contenders.
It's going to be interesting because I don't think Aljo can stick around much longer. He is huge for that division. And I think there is a time limit on how long he wants to be making that cut. My guess would be if he's successful in defeating Henry Cejudo, he looks for a champ versus champ against Alex Volkanovski later this year, provided Volkanovski gets through, or early next year, depending on when Volkanovski-Yair happens. And that's sort of the thing that hinges on his decision to go up. That would be the way I would do it. Before we get off this fight, very interested to see what happens next with Petr Yan. Going into this fight, he was frustrated by consecutive split decision losses and not knowing kind of what more I need to do to win these fights. Didn't have a lot of success on Saturday night. He's now lost 3 straight and 4 of his last 5, which feels so ridiculous. He might be the best fighter in UFC history ever to lose 3 consecutive fights. They're all against top 5 opponents. What do you do with Petr Yan next? If you're Petr Yan and his team, Danny Rube, Sayat, the crew, the people at Tiger, what do you do? Who are you looking for? What are you looking for? What comes next?
I mean, look, I just want to sing some of Petr Yan's praises a little bit in this fight. Just a touch, right? Because if you are that man, 16-5 is not your skill set. Like, your skill set is undoubtedly one of the best in the world. Now, there's a couple of points here. Like, I was talking to one of the guys I coach, and he was saying, like, is there a chance Merab wins here. And I'm like, oh, God, yeah, there's a chance that he
Right.
wins here. However, there is also a chance that he could just be slipping a touch. There could just be a chance where he's just not the elite of the elite level. To me, on Saturday, he showed he absolutely is that.
Right.
He absolutely still is the elite of that elite level. Merab Dvalishvili might just be the best fighter in the world. He might just have such a unique style and such a unique physical advantage in that division that even all of the gorgeous, and I mean gorgeous technical work that Piotr Jan was doing, his ability to keep his balance in all of those wrestling exchanges, to deal with the immediate problems, whether it be the grip fight, the knee line, the knee height, the head height battle, the hip height battle, the hip angle battle, were absolutely fucking brilliant. Like, his ability to, as soon as he got taken down, find a way back to his feet and quickly, and doing so defending any immediate chain attack, was amazing. His ability to limp arm and limp leg out of situations into counter situations was amazing. His ability to make reads and land shots on Merab, regardless of the Tasmanian devil that's coming towards him, was unbelievable. The adjustments he made with a dodgy left leg and a gammy right eye, and to still stay in the fight and still look good and still roll with shots and still implement some of his boxing and still land impactful shots, was phenomenal. That dude is still 1,000,000% right fucking up there with the elite of that division. I just think that Merab is an incredibly unique problem to have to try and deal with. And
Agreed.
It is insanely difficult to try to replicate that. Now, who do you put him against? I didn't have this name. I had the other name going in. But I think you put him with Jonathan Martinez.
Interesting.
I wanted Said Nurmagomedov versus Piotr Jan, because that would have been, grab me a bucket of fireworks and set them all alight, and I'll just
Let's sit here and watch and enjoy. Yeah, Jonathan Martinez. I mean, it's a big jump, right? It's a big jump. It gives Jonathan Martinez the big jump. It gives him the, all right, you've got 5 straight, and we'll get to Dragon here shortly. It's an interesting name. I was thinking a little more along the lines of the Song Yadong Ricky Simone winner, somebody that's already in that top 15, top 10. Piotr Jan doesn't have to go too far back. You don't have to try to convince this dude that has been world champion that, hey, now we want you to fight this guy that just got into the rankings. But maybe that is the way to go. Just a hard reset, batter Jonathan Martinez, get right, get moving forward.
So I had another name, but it's very cruel.
Okay.
It's Dom Cruz.
I mean, there's a piece of me that likes Davison Figueiredo.
I don't mind that fight, but I think for me, like, I'm looking at Topology's rankings right now, but I'm just going to run through, right? So we have Aljamain Sterling number 1, Merab Dvalishvili number 2, Sean O'Malley number 3, Piotr Jan number 4, Chito, Sandhagen, Font, Cruz, Song Yadong, Simon, Munoz, Umar, Saeed, Jonathan, Yanez, right? Now, a ton of those guys are booked.
Yep.
Fine. So we've got Saeed and Jonathan and Umar currently unbooked. We have Dom unbooked, Jan obviously now unbooked, and then we have O'Malley and obviously Dvalishvili unbooked. If they're going to wait on O'Malley, fine. If we're saying we'd like the winner of Vera and Sandhagen to fight Dvalishvili, fine. As a matchmaker, if we're doing the matchmaking heads now, I don't need to see Piotr Jan in there with the next up-and-coming prospect. There are levels to prospects, and I think either do here's the 37-year-old Dominic Cruz, who you should, if you perform...
Obliterate.
Yeah, inside a couple of rounds, he's done here, right? In the same vein, you have Jonathan Martinez, who kind of has everything to win. If he comes in against Piotr Jan and puts on a great performance, boy, oh boy, now you're talking Piotr Jan 4 straight losses And then you're talking about Jonathan Martinez having scalped the biggest name of his career with an already huge scalp in Said Nurmagomedov. So what do we do there? The fight I would make for the winner of Song Yadong and Ricky Simon is Cousin Umar.
See, and I had Cousin Umar for Jonathan Martinez, but we'll get to that down the road. We move to the co-main event. Alexander Volkov defeats Alexander Romanov inside of a round, 2 minutes, 16 seconds. He defends the first takedown, grabs a handful of fence to help him stay upright. And then it seems like Alexander Romanov is just like, well, that didn't work. I guess we're going home. I said during the fight, I guess Svelte Romanov is a thing of the past because he had a couple of fights where he came in looking tucked up. And now he was just right back to looking like me. And Alexander Volkov, my one takeaway from this fight, and you and I talked about it on the preview show, you weren't particularly interested in this fight. And I said, I just want to see if we get a little bit more of that aggressive attacking Volkov. And we got it. And I don't know that it changes a ton for me about his overall long-term, because he's 35, he's 46 fights in, he's fought everybody that's ahead of him, but it makes him even more interesting to me now as the guy that he is right now.
Look, the one caveat I said at the end of my spiel about not being massively interested, and I wasn't massively interested, I'll be very honest, is that if you're Volkov, you're still waiting on Tom Aspinall, right? He is on the Ariel Helwani show this week. Grand. I haven't yet heard what he said, but I'm sure there's some form of timeline recovery if he's on the Ariel Helwani show, right? There's a reason from there. Fine. If you're Volkov, you just got to get one more, brother. Like, you may not even need a one more. If something happens and Johnny Bones Jones goes out against Miocic and for whatever reason Blades isn't the alternative and you're the alternative, my friend, you could be fighting for a title. And if it's not Blades next, I don't know what we do here, because that's my name. My name is Curtis Blades. Let's just do that, and whoever wins doesn't beat, but fights the winner of Miocic. And are you going to tell me Blades has already got a fight?
I'm going to tell you, one, that Blades already has a fight. He is fighting Sergey Pavlovich.
Yeah, I did have that in the back of my head.
As far as I recall. Two, Curtis Blades has already beaten Alexander Volkov.
Yeah, that's fine. But this is heavyweight. Who gives a shit?
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? At some point, what is in that for Curtis Blades? If he goes out and beats Sergey Pavlovich, which is a dangerous fight.
Okay.
That is a terrific fight.
Yeah.
If he goes out and beats Sergey Pavlovich to run this to 4 straight, he's not going backwards again. He's standing there and being like, I've been the guy standing here for 3 years, fighting everybody that you put in front of me, calling for Stipe, calling for Ngannou, calling for Jones, and none of you are coming near me.
Yep.
I have 2 names. One I threw out on the preview show that you were like, why do you hate Alexander Volkov? And that's Jailton Almeida.
Yeah, I still don't like that fight.
The other, which I think is actually the more likely fight, is Sergey Spivak, who's coming off a win over Derek Lewis. He's on a 4-fight run of success, but it's another step up in competition for him. Stylistically, dynamically, it's a sort of a replication of what we thought maybe we would see on Saturday. Grappler versus rangy striker. Sergey Spivak certainly has more than one takedown attempt in his arsenal. He's going to come in good shape, ready to go. I think that's the way they go, because the UFC has this thing where they like to do, you're number 7, he's number 8. This is the next fight. And I think Volkov's just in that position where he's saying yes to whatever gets put in front of him.
May I throw out my alternative name?
Of course.
Now, this is not what the UFC will do. But if you are looking, because this is where I'm thinking right now, is you're going to force either Pavlovich or Blades to take a slight step back in the contendership for the title. Whoever loses that takes a slight back step, right? If we are in the interest of the UFC building a line of contenders for John Jones to start knocking off, well, Tom Aspinall's going to need at least one before he comes back. At least one. He might want just a real tune-up, and then he might want a big fight,
and then one, yep,
and then he might want to do the thing. Fine, I'd have no problem with that. If you want to do Alexander Romanov versus Tom Aspinall for the comeback, I got no issues. Right, that'll be a very quick one and done. We're out of here. We go home. He gets his cobwebs done off and whatever.
By the way, that's my fight.
Okay, sure, no problem. If I am the UFC and I'm in the idea that I want, okay, let's say Blades wins, grand, he's in with a title shot. Let's say Pavlovich wins, grand, he's in with the title shot. Fine. If I'm looking at the next couple of guys, well, we have Jailton Almeida, maybe a fight or 2 fights away. Why don't we do Alexander Volkov versus Tai Tuivasa? It's a name.
Yep.
The fans would like it. They don't give a shit that Tai Tuivasa's coming off 2 losses. They're going to go in there. Tuivasa is going to try and do hands things and throw big watermelons at him. And if it doesn't work, he's going to get finished. And if it does work, well, then Tai Tuivasa's now back in the race with the thing.
Love it. I'm sure they will go to Australia at some point this year again, or New Zealand or somewhere in that region. Love it. The Alexander Romanov side of this, as I just said, Tom Aspinall is my guy. Whenever Tom Aspinall is healthy, you put him in there, you let him run over this man. And we hit the point where we go, remember when Alexander Romanov was a minus 400 favorite against Marcin Tybura, and then the house of cards collapsed? He's a guy that next year turns up in the PFL heavyweight tournament. That's what I think. I think they said on the walkout that he changed all of his camp, all of his coaching, all of everything. 2 fights ago, he looked svelte and trim and coming in and excited and seemed like an exciting guy. And now he seems like a guy that's on his way to the PFL heavyweight tournament.
Yep.
Which is an okay place to be. Look, you're fighting for $1 million. Go get it.
Yep.
Third fight on the main card. A fight that gave you just absolute, that face right there. Nikita Krylov and Ryan Spann, former main event from a couple of weeks ago. An absolute chaos fest, frantic, impatient fight at light heavyweight, or at 215 para light heavyweights. Krylov gets the win with a triangle choke 3 minutes and 36 seconds in. This was just dumb. This was just sloppy and ugly and mistake filled. You are the grappler here. I am none of the anythings. So I will let you just hold court and get it off your chest, son. I know you're feeling it's been a rough weekend around the house. Shouts to Hux. Glad he's looking better. But let it all out. Let it all out on these 2 gentlemen.
I just don't understand, dude. I just don't understand. I messaged you and I said that this makes me want to smash my head through a wall. We are talking about if we are to say that the UFC is still the premier organization for MMA in the world, and I think there's an argument as to whether they are or not, especially in certain divisions, we are saying that these 2 gentlemen are 2 of the top 15 fighters in the entire world at 215 pounds. That is egregious to me. I'm just gonna run through some of my notes that I have here for this fight. Spann, as usual, is hurt inside 30 seconds due to barreling into shots completely wildly. Krylov grabs himself in an over-under, manages to reverse the position and lands a really nice knee. Nice Uchimata, and Spann somehow lands with an arm trapped in what looks like mount. No, actually, it's 3/4 mount. How has Krylov managed to end up in bottom 3/4 mount from there? As Krylov aggressively turns in, instead of getting up, Spann tries to free his knee and Krylov gets to a single. My oh my. Krylov dumps Spann to a hip nicely, but falls into a high-risk guillotine. Great. For some reason, Spann switches off to an anaconda, even though he's punched a high-risk guillotine. Span eventually releases the anaconda, and Krylov punches a really nice underhook. Span wants another arm-in guillotine. Krylov is starting to feel it because you could tell that he's punching and he's raising his hips up and he's looking to clear his head from the guillotine. Why, when he punches an underhook, he doesn't immediately raise his head up? I have no fucking clue. But here we are in 215-pound MMA. Eventually, Span relinquishes and Krylov is nice and heavy on top. He has the bulldog choke and switches off for a Merkel. Merkel is a term that's used in wrestling. It's a reverse seatbelt, basically. If you think what a seatbelt is, it's one over the shoulder, one over the hip. A Merkel is the opposite. So it's the far arm over the shoulder and the near arm underneath the hip in a crossbody type control. So he gets the Merkel. Where am I? And gets into a back body lock. Table Span to the ground nicely and is looking for the back. Of course, Krylov now commits cardinal sin and pulls his own hips underneath Span's. But of course, Span's too shit to capitalize on it. Manages to wrestle up somehow and dumps Krylov into another guillotine. And I've then put, this is utter fucking madness. We spend about 35 seconds where we're just exchanging back attacks somehow until eventually Span's on bottom, wraps the Kimura. Krylov does the right thing. He could be looking to take the back, but he's landing on rib shots. For some reason, Krylov tries to bail on the shoulder pressure because he's a fucking idiot. Span sweeps him with it. And then instead of capitalizing on the sweep, thinks about being a ballerina and trying to take his back with absolutely no arm posts whatsoever. Oh, my Lord. Krylov exits out the side door, trying to take Span's back. I've then put in big caps, horrendous stuff. Krylov, no hooks, is on a back body lock and manages to pendulum himself over Span. I just have so little idea of what's going on at this point. And then to end this absolute farce of a fight, Span's like, oh, he must be hurt or something, and dives into a triangle. Dives into a triangle, and Krylov is like, I'm not sure what's happening, but sure.
I'll take this.
Krylov doesn't even lock up the triangle fully. Now, what Krylov did well in this is he managed to cut himself an angle so that his hamstring was really flush onto Span's neck. Span had done a horrendous job at trying to defend himself in any way, shape, or form, and had ran so aggressively into this triangle that instead of being on his feet or knees, he was sitting on his ass like this, as if he's a fucking elephant or something, with his arm just dangling out here like a massive trunk. So Krylov gets an underhook of the far arm, which is great. That's exactly what he should be doing to cut the angle off. But if I'm Span, I'm at least trying to open my elbow to build a little bit of height. I'm trying to frame with my other arm. I'm maybe trying to drape my leg over if I don't feel like I'm going to be able to get up successfully. I'm doing something. And instead, he just allows Krylov to underhook the arm, cut the angle, doesn't even close the triangle, squeezes, and Span's like, oh, shit, I guess I tap. I mean, I said to you going in, and you had a problem with it. I was like, this is a shit fight.
I didn't think it would be this terrible.
Oh, my God, it's horrendous stuff like.
I think all of the vitriol that we direct at middleweight needs to be detoured, diverted to 205. Because pulling up the worldwide rankings, courtesy of our friends at Tapology, Nikita Krylov is number 6. Ryan Spann is number 10. There's not a fighter that is competing outside of the UFC in the top. Scrolling. 14. We get to number 15, Vadim Nemkov as our first representative. Corey Anderson is there at 17. Thiago Santos is 18. We get some other guys down the line. This was a terrible fight. This to me, and my response to you when you were like, oh my God, this fight was the gap between the haves and the have-nots at light heavyweight is actually like, I can't hold my hands far enough apart on the screen for you to understand, because I think that, and look, we're going to find out real soon how many in that upper tier are separated from the Krylovs of the world, as Krylov is number 6, and will probably fight someone like Alexander Rakic when he gets healthy and comes back. He's already fought Jan Błachowicz. Jan beat him pretty handily. I don't think they make that happen. He's already fought Magomed Ankalaev. I don't think they make that happen. And so Rakic feels like the obvious guy to me. And that's going to tell us just simply, is Rakic a step above, or is Rakic part of this junk class? Because everything Krylov and below is the junk class. And I don't know that there's anybody, like, I can't think of, and I can't see anybody as I scroll through this list of the division that I go, okay, well, at least this person's coming to save us. At least this person is on the ascent. Because the one or two people that I'm like, oh, maybe. I mean, Carlos Ulberg looking okay lately, but like, certainly has some holes. Certainly older than you would want to qualify someone as a prospect. It's bad. 205's bad.
I've just closed the whole fucking division up. Like, let's just pack it up and go home. Meld them into heavyweights and let them get trucked over there. Like, forget it.
The one thing I will say from this fight that I want to see, give Modestas Bukauskas Ryan Spann. Put that fight together and let's see if Bukauskas can be somebody, right? 29 years old, coming off a good return to the UFC, short notice, fought a bunch, right? 3 fights in like 4 or 5 months, won them all, moving forward, having some success, 2-time Cage Warriors champion. If the UFC's going back to Europe at some point in the summer, if they decide to do a double London like they did last year, something of that note, just give Bukauskas the shot to jump into that top 15 and be somebody maybe that has a little bit of juice.
So my shout for Modestas Bukauskas was either going to be Paul Craig,
okay,
or Dom Reyes, if he's still in the UFC.
I mean, I think Dom Reyes is just such damaged goods at this point that I wouldn't risk it.
My point here is Bukauskas had a tough enough run, not necessarily in matchups, but just the way his luck turned in his first UFC outing.
Agreed.
He goes out, does what he needs to do to get back into the UFC, takes another pretty stern test on his way back in, short notice, does whatever, and does well, wins.
Yep.
If I was the UFC, I'd say, okay, you pulled us out of a bit of a jam and you performed really well. Here's a matchup to get you settled. And that's something that we've seen historically in the UFC. Yep. Now, that's not to say Paul Bear Jew Craig can't just submit him in the third round, right? It's not to say he can't do it at all. It's not to say Dom Reyes doesn't come back and find that left hand again. I don't think he does.
I like the Paul Craig one better than I like Dom Reyes.
It's fine. Because you could go, and if they come back to the UK late in September, whatever, if they decide to, if the March card is great, I mean, that's a co-main event, right? Paul Craig versus Bukauskas, or that's a,
third fight on the main card, yeah.
Yeah, or it's on a main card, yep. And then you can do the congratulations for getting back to the UFC. Thank you very much for taking us out of a hole in Australia. Here's a hometown fight against a hometown fighter. Cheers.
Right. I like it. Move to a pair of bantamweight fights. First up, Jonathan Martinez, Said Nurmagomedov. A very competitive, you and I both feel maybe scored, not incorrectly, but you could make a case that it goes the other way. But Jonathan Martinez gets the biggest win of his career. It's a 5th straight victory. He continues to climb the ranks. You mentioned earlier that you like him as the opponent for Petr Yan. Before we get to the matchmaking parts of it, even though I believe you scored the fight for Said Nurmagomedov, or you at least, like, looking at it, thought, hey, Nurmagomedov does more here. What did you like about Jonathan Martinez's game and actions. And yeah, that face is the face I made too. There wasn't a lot in this fight that I was like, man, Jonathan Martinez. It felt like his effectiveness or what won him the fight was just coming forward and just being the initiator, which is years ago we know isn't the thing that wins. He has some good moments, right? Late in that third round, he has good moments. I think the first is clear. And so all three judges scored it the same way. First round, Said Nurmagomedov. Last two, Jonathan Martinez. I think in both the second and third rounds, there is a case to be made that Said did enough to deserve the nod. Away you go, sir.
I couldn't agree more. I think the first round was, without a shadow of a doubt, a Said Nurmagomedov round. Hurts him a number of times, jumps on his back, tries to finish him a couple of times. Doesn't get super close, but a couple of those choke attempts are pretty deep, and Martinez is grimacing, and he knows that he's under the chin, and he has to rotate inwards, and he has to clear his chin, and all that stuff. Fine. Round two, not a lot happens, really. There's a takedown from Said Nurmagomedov where he grabs a kick and runs him to the mat, and then Said uses some butterfly hooks to elevate him, and does a good enough job of getting up, and then there's just a lot of fence work. I wouldn't have been mad if I think it was Keith Peterson refereeing that fight. If Keith had just broken it up a little bit earlier and forced them to be out in space, because when they were out in space, the dexterity and variety of the Said Nurmagomedov kicking game was causing Martinez all sorts of problems. Whether it was a low kick, a question mark kick up top, whether it was a body kick, the side kick, Nurmagomedov was catching Jonathan a lot. And we know that Martinez's game is to be tough, to tuck his chin down, and to walk forward and use that in-range boxing with the shorter low kicks. So Nurmagomedov was just catching him and catching him and catching him at range. And I felt like that's what happened in the third round, right? Like, he drops Martinez in the third round with a flash knockdown, lands a couple of really nice kicks in that third round. Martinez does get to the triangle and the armbar, right? And that armbar was the closest thing to finishing the fight in the entire fight. That was a definitely bang to rights armbar. Said was tough, maybe took some pops. Absolutely did a good job of using his secondary hand as he was turning the corner to pull the pressure back off that armbar. But it was tight. It was tight. Without a shadow of a doubt, it was tight in there. And so he then gets his back taken, eventually gets back to standing. Bit of knees in the clinch. Bit of shots from Jonathan to end the fight. But the third round, I could see you scoring for Martinez because of the armbar attempt. It was the most significant moment in the fight, in the round, sorry. If we then look at the second round, it's tough. I see that you're saying that there wasn't a ton and there was a bit of clinch work or whatever, but I don't know. I don't know. It was a close fight. It was those two second rounds were close. Those 2 second rounds were close.
It's a close fight. It's a competitive fight. I don't think Said Nurmagomedov loses any ground. Like, I think he is now, we now know exactly where he fits in this division.
Same for Martinez.
And to me, it's just outside the top 15. Perfect guy as this guy. Right? The guy that tests the up-and-comers, the guy that faces the veteran that's looking for a reset, things like that. Martinez, I think we do as well, but it's still, you can make the argument that it's undefined because he's on this winning streak. You said Petr Yan. I think this is where you just throw a lamb into the pit for Cousin Umar and go, give him this guy that's on a winning streak. People won't know that they're not related, and it can be make him fight 2 Nurmagomedovs back to back. I think this is, to me, with Umar coming off that win over Hani Barcelos in January, get him in there with a guy that is moving forward, but also isn't, because I don't think you need to hustle Umar into the upper tier yet. I think you could if you want to, but I think you can also like stick him as the co-main event somewhere against Jonathan Martinez get him a win over a guy that's on a 5-fight winning streak and done well, really well overall in the UFC. And I think he gets him out of there relatively quickly if he wants to. And then you go, good Lord, this kid, man, this 23-year-old. And that's, unfortunate for Jonathan Martinez that he's probably going to end up being a sacrificial lamb to somebody, but these are the parts there are parts everyone has to play in this world.
For me, I think I don't mind that too much, right? I don't mind that too much. I kind of feel like I would love, we don't do this, please don't do this, but I wouldn't be mad at Umar Nurmagomedov Petr Yan, right?
No, neither would I.
That would be an unbelievable fight. I just think if Cousin Umar's going to fight anyone, let it be somebody that doesn't need an immediate rebuild. And that is Petr Yan, right? That's why I pick Martinez. I've got no problem with Umar Nurmagomedov Martinez, but in the same vein, I kind of have a problem because it's not competitive at all. I really don't think it's competitive at all. Martinez did okay in the grappling exchanges, and Nurmagomedov isn't a Nurmagomedov in terms of the grappling. Right. I think you have Cousin Umar in there, and he does the blueprint things that he does, where he takes your man down.
He gets a neck in the first round.
Box you up in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, the fight that I actually would like is Chris Gutierrez and Jonathan Martinez, because they're two ascending guys that we don't really know their ceiling, but we kind of know their ceiling. The trouble is they're best friends. Chris Gutierrez was in Jonathan Martinez's corner. They trained together at Factory X. So that's not happening. That's the fight I actually want. Two guys that are both going forward. We don't need both of them at this point. This division is loaded. Let's figure it out. But if we can't have that, sacrifice them. Move to the other bantamweight fight, the one that excites both of us a little bit more. Mario Batista dominates Guido Canetti, gets a 4th straight victory, a 3rd straight submission, a 2nd consecutive first round submission win. And this kid is looking more and more like a guy to keep real close tabs on with each performance, with each outing. The suplex into the finish was gorgeous. The understanding of his position and his use of mic time was great. Give this kid a big fight. Give this kid somebody, as you said to me in watching it, give him somebody that's going to fight him, that's going to stand in there and fight him. Give me your thoughts and then give me your name.
Okay. So my thoughts, obviously I picked him for the spotlight this week. The reason why I did that is because he is somebody who is learning who he is and really learning who he is. It felt to me as though he reminds me a little bit of the Hulk, in that he really wants to be a nice guy. He really wants to be
Bruce Banner.
He really does. And he really wants to fight in a technical manner where he's moving and the other person's moving and there's a technical exchange of skill and whatever. And then somebody like what's his fucking name?
Guido Canetti.
Guido Canetti comes along and in the first 10 seconds slams his leg twice and throws a spinning hook kick. And then Batista just rips his shirt off and was like, well, okay, fine. If Hulk you want to do this, we can do this.
The truth is I'm angry all the time.
Right. And then he just has this incredible ability to be calm in the chaos. And that's one of the things that really, really impresses me, is Guido Canetti is throwing the kitchen fucking sink at him. But because the footwork is so perfect and because the in and out range play is so good, that Canetti's just throwing it air all the time. And then eventually, when he gets to the ground, the passing pressure, the spatial awareness. I was impressed with Guido Canetti and his ability to continue to keep moving and his ability to continue to keep guard and re-guard and whatever. But it was just 3 steps behind. We were leaning on ice skates the entire time that Batista was trying to pass. there were two things as well. One was the suplex into the finish, and the second one was when he was on Canetti's back and they were standing. I've never seen this before, but obviously there's a point where you're standing and you'd prefer to be on your back, right? You prefer to be on your back because you're not taking the opponent's weight through your legs, and the body triangle isn't as effective if they're standing and whatever. And traditionally, guys will use like a half Nelson, or they'll try to sag weight into their hips to make you collapse backwards or whatever. And this is where the Hulk type moniker comes from, is Bautista has like an S-grip choke on. It's not on, but it's like around the chin. And instead of doing any of the quote unquote technical things that we've just described, he just leans his chest back and just pulls Ganito Canetti and tries to just slam him, like just fucking pull the choke, pull his own arm through his neck and make him fall over. And now he didn't fall over. And Bautista was a bit like, oh, that's a shame. I guess I'll have to do this properly then. And then disengages the back and then suplexes him, and then we get to the finish, whatever. But just the raw savagery of that, to be like, oh, you fucking started it, didn't you? You started it. Yeah. Now I'm going to finish.
He'd like to go out there and have it be the fight with Jay Perrin, where he could go 15 minutes and he can beat the hell out of your midsection and he can smash home kicks and he can be technical and show you all the wonderful things he has learned from years and years and years of training at the MMA lab with John Crouch and all of that crew. And then you hit him and he's like, well, fuck this. I just don't want, like, I honestly, he's somebody I would love to get on a conversation with, or even just sit down and interview, because, and I don't think he will answer it. I don't think he will say what I think is simmering inside of him. But I think after choking out Brian Kelleher and then being like, cool, here's Benito Lopez, who hasn't fought in 4 years, and choking him out real quick and making it like, good, he's not on my level, more. And then being like, great, here's 43-year-old Guido Canetti. I think internally there is a Hulk that is like throwing desks over because he wants an actual name. He wants an actual opponent. Mr. Harry Powell, who do you want that opponent to be?
So I have one dream matchup, okay, and the timeline kind of works.
Okay.
And then I have one that I also don't think is going to happen, but I would like to happen. So the dream matchup is if Rob Font gets through Adrian Yanez, give me Rob Font. Just chuck him in there and let's see what fucking happens. The other one is the winner of Song Yudong versus Ricky Simon. And I think that one of the, or even the loser, frankly. Yeah. So I think both of those is a great test, a big step up. And I love both of them. I wouldn't mind Said Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista, because let's be honest, both of us scored that fight for Said. I don't think he comes out of it any lesser off than he was in.
I agree.
You've just labeled Said as the guy that tests the up-and-comers coming from the lower 15 to the upper 15. Well, then that's your guy. But Rob Font gets me all sorts of...
that, yeah. I mean, I think that's a hard sell, and I will pitch that fight just as a question. So I will be able to answer this for you later in the week at some point, because I will just reach out to Tyson and be like, hey, man, if Rob wins, is this something you would even consider? I would hasten to guess that it's a no, because Rob is in the top 10. It's coming off a win over potentially coming off a win over a guy that's unbeaten in the UFC and all of those things. You mentioned Said. You mentioned the test. The like veteran guy figure this out. Give me Davey Grant. Timelines work out. Give me Davey Grant.
So this was my other one. However, what we've said, right, is the internal combustion engine that is Mario Bautista is pissed off that you've given him a couple of 40-plus fighters or a couple of guys declining in their careers. We've just had a Sun Tzu and Davey Grant show us what should happen for fighters that are in the decline of their career, is that you get guys that are similarly matched competing against each other in the dwindling eras of their career. I don't really want to feed Davey Grant to Mario.
Oh, cool. The other one that makes sense, that I don't think the other side of wants any part of is the Cody Garbrandt fight.
Oh,
Timelines work out. It's a big name. It's a guy that wants to throw, right? The only thing he can do is be quick with his hands and his feet. But
I prefer you do Dom Cruz Bautista than you do Cody Garbrandt Bautista.
I mean,
do that.
I'm good with either of those. I also would be okay with Davison Figueiredo. Let's just find out right now where these guys are at.
That would be fun.
Let's see how Davison Figueiredo looks at 35. Get him in there with a guy that's on a run. I want to protect Mario Batista a little bit because I do think he is. I think he's the goods.
Nah, he's not.
Not like the goods, not the championship goods. I think he is a 8 through 15 the goods.
Oh, agree.
Like he is
he's Brandon.
He's Pedro Munoz.
Yeah. He's Pedro Munoz. He's Brandon Royval of the division.
Right.
Bit of a man. Can do a bit of everything.
Right. Isn't going to get to championship level, but is going to live just outside of the top 5 in the top 10 for years and years and years on end.
Yes, agreed.
It is the severe takeaways for UFC Las Vegas. Harry Powell, E. Spencer Kite. We do a little reset here as we buzz through the rest of this card because there's not a ton, but we want to address some of it. Vitor Petrino gets a unanimous decision win over the pleasure man Anton Turkai. Look, these are two guys that are just young and raw and not good. And Vitor Petrino, give him another Contender Series fighter next time out. My suggestion would be Ihor Pretoria. Let him beat the hell out of the guy that beat up Shogun Hua. No, you just don't care.
Just cut them both. Move on.
Fair. Heavyweights, Carl William and Łukasz Dreszki. Do you want to just cut them as well? Williams can do a little bit.
I was kind of impressed. We got some interesting things in this fight. Like it turned into, big meaty men doing big meaty things. But we
got hands on knees at one point.
Yes, that we had hands on knees. We
got hands on knees at one point. We got a.
Yeah. But I think both of them have a little of an upside. I think Williams was just far better of the athlete here, and Brzeski didn't really know what to do with that. But yeah, I got no problem seeing Williams fight again. I got no problem seeing Brzeski have another fight that I probably won't pay much attention to. But this is, I don't want to descend this into UFC caliber, but neither of these fellas are really caliber.
Agreed. Carl Williams looks to me like a guy that maybe should be at 205, but is just at 245 or fights at 245 and is a heavyweight. Give him Justin Tafa. Let's see if he can eat a big lunchbox. Get the bantamweight fight, Davey Grant and Rafael Assunção. Just wildness to end this fight. I don't think we necessarily have to relitigate or litigate the decision to split them up from the fence grab and restart. It happened. There's nothing we can do about it anyways. It felt weird to me in the moment because it felt like at the absolute worst, Assunção was in a 50-50 position and should be right back to a 50-50 position, not a, hey, you're compromised and this guy now gets to stand position. I'm happy that Keith Peterson took the point. I think there is a way, there is a mechanic in there that you can take the point without separating them. And I think that would have been maybe the more effective, more useful decision. But Davey Grant to lock that thing up the way he did, as tight as it was, it's why we love Davey Grant.
Look, I'm all in. Like, this is genuinely now, there's a couple of singing points here. The first is Peterson gives Davey a warning for an early offense grab, sees it the second time, takes the point. That's amazing. I would just love, and I'm not saying to do this, but Herb Dean warned Piotr Jan 4 times about fingers. Maybe 3 times.
So the one pushback I will give on the fingers is that at no point did he actually poke him.
Doesn't matter. It's illegal. The rule says you cannot fight with your fingers outstretched. That's the rule.
Fair.
The rule is you point them to the sky or you have a closed fist.
Fair.
rules are rules, right? Like,
listen, we skipped over and buzzed through Petrino Turkai, where there were 97 fouls that Mark Smith.
We're cutting both of them. Who cares? Just move on.
Okay.
But like, I know that this is a very difficult thing to do, but I feel like let's take even that's bad. But in most football, right, soccer, whatever, you can get a warning.
You don't have to clarify.
Yeah, fine. I'm clarifying for other people, right? You have a
mainly European show. You're good.
Sure. After the warning, you get a yellow card, and that's like your first point, right? Your red card is your disqualification. You've gone, you're done, you're out of here. And I feel like if we did the same thing, and Keith Peterson did that to the fucking letter, brilliant. Says, look, Davey, don't fucking do it again.
Here's your yellow.
Here's your fucking yellow. No, sorry, here's your warning.
Right.
Then he gives him the yellow, and he says, point, gone. Now, what did the really interesting thing that happened then is as soon as that yellow card came in, Davey was like, oh, I might have to fucking finish this dude now. Fuck.
I might have already had to. Now I absolutely have to.
Yeah. And then to do it with a fucking reverse triangle is insane.
And reverse triangle to where you go night-night.
Yeah.
Not like you tap and work. Because in the initial lockup, I was like, okay, does Assunção make it to the bell? And within a couple seconds, it was Assunção's asleep.
Yep. Yeah,
it's not, are you going to make it to the end? Because this fight ended at 4 minutes and 43 seconds. It wasn't, are you going to make it to the end? It was, hang on, he's asleep. And Keith Peterson did a great job in that fight. Truthfully.
100%.
Every step of the way, great job. Got right in there, was right down on the mat with Assunção. Hey, are you okay? He got a thumbs up. And then 2 seconds later, Assunção was like, I go sleep.
Yep. Keith Peterson grabbed the hands 3 times.
Yep.
Perfect.
Gave him every opportunity. Show me you're still here. We got nothing and we're done.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I don't want Davey Grant fighting.
Okay. What do you want? What do you want for Davey Grant?
Victor Henry.
See, and I had Said Nurmagomedov for Victor Henry. I'm okay with either of those.
Yeah.
Because I think Victor Henry deserves a step up. I think he is clearly better than Tony Gravely, and we'll skip to that one right now just to close out the bantamweights. It was a good win. It went through 2 rounds exactly how I expected. Tony Gravely to be good and active first round, VW to come out and be a lot more effective in the second. I was impressed that Gravely was able to have as much success and stamina and conditioning as he had to make it competitive in the third. But I think this is just who these 2 guys are. Victor Henry is a little bit better because he's a little more well-rounded. There's a little bit more diversity to his game. And whether it's Davey Grant or Said Nurmagomedov, give me somebody from this card on the same timeline, get him back out there. Because the sneaky thing with Henry is that he's like 35, 37 years old. And so we don't have to slow play this. There's no reason to wait. He's back in the win column. Give him the test. Let's see how far up he can go.
That's kind of why I want the Davey Grant fight, because
couple of older fellas.
Victor Henry's not breaking the top 15. Like, Victor Henry's not getting the top 10, top 5. He's not getting a title shot. Like, get him in there against a guy that isn't going to punish him a ton. That there'll be an interesting, a close, a fun back and forth. I will say about both of these, what both of these are, and what this shows you for Victor Henry and Tony Gravely, is this is what being a consummate professional fight means.
Yes.
What it means is that you maximize the skills that you can build and have in a body that isn't Piotr Jan's, that isn't Murabdabashvili's. This is what you get when you peak as a martial artist and you dedicate your life to this as a regular human. Because you look at Murabdabashvili, Piotr Jan, Aljamain Sterling, Corey Sandhagen, these aren't regular humans. They're just not.
Right.
They have something unique, both mentally and physically, that allows them to reach the heights that they reach. Then you have a Tony Gravely and you have a Victor Henry who just dedicate their lives to this, and they build a well-rounded game and a well-rounded skill set, and they understand that they need to be extremely well-conditioned in order to compete against anyone put in front of them. This is what consummate professionalism looks like in MMA.
It also, to me, is the further indication, further reminder or declaration of why bantamweight is the best division in the sport by far. Because you have guys like this that are, as you said, consummate pros, that if they took this skill, took who they are, and translated it up several divisions, like if you threw these men into middleweight bodies, they're in the top 15. Because middleweight is without that depth of talent.
If you put these cunts in middleweight, they're fighting for a title in a fight.
I was wondering where you were going with that, like, disgusted head. But this is what I mean, right? This is why bantamweight to me is so good, because you have these guys like Tony Gravely has now lost 2 straight fights. I believe he's 1 fight to the good, 1 fight above 500 in the UFC. And he's infinitely better than that record. He's just lost to good competition, like Victor Henry, like Javid Basharat. These things happen in MMA. We slide back to the middleweight division. Josh Fremd gets his first UFC win over Cedricus Dumas. Guillotine choke in the second round. This was a clear Contender Series guy, not yet ready for this stage, not yet well-rounded enough to be competing at this level, because as much as a lot of people like Josh Fremd, he's just a middling dude. He's just a middling middleweight, and he dominated a bunch of this fight. And I think that tells us everything we need to know about each of these men.
We talk about consummate professionals in Tony Gravely and whatever. There is a level of well-roundedness that you expect from a UFC fighter. Neither of these fellas have it.
Right.
And I feel like some of it is going to be that I bet you getting good matchmaking and good tests at 185 in the regional circuit is hard enough as it is.
100%.
It's tough. But it's on you as a fighter
to find it,
to make sure that not only you find it, but when you're in the gym, you're throwing shots that doesn't look like you're drunk, that doesn't look like you're a newborn zebra. It's on you to build the skills there.
Right.
Because it's not a thing that I'm expecting everyone to throw shots like Faraz Sahabi trains his fighters to throw the same jab. I'm not expecting Trevor Whitman-esque precision from a guy debuting in the UFC. I'm not expecting that. But you go and look at Javid Basharat and Farid Basharat, who debuted, or when Amir Albazi or somebody of that ilk comes in and makes their UFC debut on 7-0, 8-0. Go and replicate that and have a look at Cedric Dumas, who's also 7-0, and tell me that that's the same level of skill set, because it's fucking not. Like, now you could argue that the Basharat brothers have been lifelong martial artists and all that, fine. That's what it takes, unfortunately. Yep. That's what it takes, and that's the standard that we should be setting. A guy should not come into the UFC and have 30 seconds where he lands some shots on a dude that's not that good defensively, and we start to get a little excited, and then he runs into a guillotine. That shouldn't be happening. We should be having performances like a Javid and a Farid Basharat who go out against good level competition. Trevin Jones is not a world beater, but he knows what he's doing in there. Yep. And he looks sloppy. And if he catches you, you might go night-night.
Knocked out Mario Batista, had Cody Garbrandt in dangerous positions, fought really well against Sadykhub Kakhramonov, who's a guy we both like.
Right. So if you come in and you make a statement against that kind of guy where you don't get touched and you do a lot of the touching, well, then we know that you're UFC caliber. Trevin Jones is the level that we should be looking at to enter the UFC.
As the floor of each division, yeah.
That's not disrespectful to Trevin Jones, because if you put Trevin Jones on the regional scene, he fucks up most dudes.
Right.
But that's the point. That's what it should be. The point should be that you get to a level in the regional scene where you are dominating fighters or you're having really close fights with other fighters who have gotten to that level. And to me, the epitome of that is Jordan Vucenic, Paul Hughes, and Morgan Charrier of Cage Warriors. All three of those you could chuck into the 145 division at Cage Warriors, and they do just fine.
They do really well. Yeah, I mean, the thing, I'm looking up Josh Frem because prior to arriving in the UFC, where he lost his first two fights, Fluffy Hernandez and Tresean Gore, had won 7 of 8 on the regional circuit, but his one loss was to Gregory Rodriguez, who is the one guy in that group that reached the UFC level and then hasn't had tremendous success at the UFC level. He's been fine, but this is the thing you're saying, I believe, is like, we need to be looking for more than just he'll be fine. And I think, so divisionally, I think there's obviously, as we were saying, bantamweight, it's certainly different. Middleweight, there's limited opportunities, but maybe that just means we go easy on middleweight. We don't rush any of these guys, because Cedricus Dumas, for as good as he looked in winning his Contender Series fight, to me, and it's one of the notes that I think I threw in my About Saturday's Action column on SevereMMA.com, was what happened to, they used to sign people in the early seasons of Contender Series to developmental contracts. That's what Chase Hooper got. That's what William Knight got initially. I believe Bavon Lewis at one point got one. Like, why not just sign this kid and let him get some more experience? Just, we're keeping an eye on you, but we need you to go and fight 2, 3, 4 more times in the next 12 to 18 months. And we need to see some growth and development. It'd be great if you went to a different gym. Why can't we see that again?
Agreed. Move
on to the women's flyweight division. Ariane Lipski looks the best she's looked in the UFC by far against JJ Aldrich. Picks her apart over 3 rounds, 30-27s across the board. I had said coming in that Lipski had felt to me like one of the greater disappointments of a fighter that had some hype coming in and just hadn't come anywhere near delivering on those expectations. I'm not saying this erases it all, but boy, oh boy, do I want to see her fight again.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it erases much, actually. What it does instead is just maybe adds another log to the very, very, very low embers of her UFC career. We know what JJ Aldrich is, right? Not the best athlete in the world, but very technical, knows what she's doing, knows how to move her head, can strike really well, great jab, can close the distance pretty well, was jabbing the face off Erin Blanchfield for a hot second until she got guillotined. And Lipski came in here and just took everything away from her. I was so impressed by the takedown defense. I was so impressed by the willingness to jab, to move her head, to land shots. All of it was fantastic. All of it. I couldn't be more impressed with Lipski in this one. If she can come out, and again, she's going to fight better athletes where some of the explosiveness on those single legs is going to be way better than it was against JJ Aldrich, and she's going to need to be a little further away from those shots when they come in. But if she can fight anywhere near this against a couple of other fighters, I'm down to watch. I'm down.
Have you got a name?
Not
off the top of your head, not one that you figured out originally, or just not one that you're
confident on.
Okay.
I have no I don't know, dude. What about Tracy Cortez?
Ooh, I would love to see that.
That was my name. I'm not sure if I'm confident about it, because it's
I would love to see that. That's a further step up than I was going, but I would love to see that because that's a wrestler that's going to wrestle.
Right. My thoughts are Tracy Cortez. I'd like to see her fight somebody that's willing to really strike and really go for it.
Agreed.
And that's actually what I saw with Lipski. Yep. And so if I'm Lipski and Lipski's camp and I'm saying, shit, we were confident in those striking exchanges today. This was great. We need to do more of this. And we were really good at stopping the takedown. Why not ride that confidence? See whether those takedown stoppages really help. Because if they do, we're going to land some shots on Tracy Cortez, right?
Smash some of those knees home. Yep.
They're going to smash some of those knees home. Some of those elbows are going to be there for us. And that's the test. Because for Lipski, it's the other thing. What's she, 27 now?
She might, yeah, I think she's 29.
29.
I believe she's 29 now.
I know that this might be this is a step up for sure, but
she turned 29 at the end of January.
We can't fuck around here.
Yeah.
Let's have that good performance. Let's roll it. If she blows through Tracy Cortez the way she did at JJ Aldrich, all right, motherfucker, we're here.
We're in the top 15. Yep, we're getting opportunities. I went a step below that and said the winner of the upcoming Jillian Robertson Piera Rodriguez fight, because if Jillian Robertson wins, you get a grappler. Again, you've got to stop takedowns. You've got to show you can defend if she does get you to the ground, but it's also someone you can style on
100%.
if you stop those takedowns. And if Piera Rodriguez wins, that is somebody that is going to come forward and fight you on your terms, and you have to show that you could be the better striker.
Sure.
Love it. JJ Aldrich remains JJ Aldrich.
100%.
Nothing happens. She stays where she is. It's 2 straight losses. That sucks for her, but she's quality. Flyweight division, Bruno Silva, gets a technical submission win over Tyson Nam in the second round. It's now 3 straight wins. It's 3 straight finishes. 2 years off didn't seem to have any impact on him. You're making weird faces.
Sorry, I've just seen that Vitor Petrino and Anton Turkai got 50 grand for fight of the night. Has Dana been slapped too many times? What is going on here? Boys! Fight of the night! What the fuck for?
Folks, you may see me start to cry on this feed. I mean, look, if Saeed and Jonathan Martinez didn't get it for their fight, then yeah. Now that you've had that detour, has it derailed you for the rest of the show? Do you want to talk about Bruno Silva?
Yeah, Bruno Silva was fucking brilliant, wasn't he? Like, really, really great ability to shut down a power striker, in that you just keep moving, you bang the body, you bang the legs, you keep moving, you keep moving, you keep moving, you keep moving, you bang the body, you bang the legs. And then when he least expects it, you just fucking Lyoto Machida / Anderson Silva him, and you dragon kick him into the fucking abyss, and then you finish him. All right, cool, motherfucker. I'm here. Lovely. Wonderful. Fair play to you.
We love flyweight. This should throw him close to the rankings, if not back into the rankings, because it's now 3 straight. It's now 3 consecutive finishes. He's another one of these guys, as we talked about a little bit with Victor Henry. He's 32 years old. We ain't got time to, there's no need to waste around. Do you have a name? Because I have one, and I look forward to your thoughts on it.
I don't have a name. You tell me.
If he wins on Saturday, Muhammad Mokaev.
Oh, God, you hate Bruno Silva. Jeez.
I don't. I want to test for Muhammad Mokaev. Because, like, Jafel Filo on Saturday.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's nowhere near to happening. I think the UFC go way above Bruno Silva.
Interesting.
Beats Jafel Filo. I think that
Mokaev, if Mokaev wins, he's getting a top 10 opponent. He's getting Amir Albazi. He's getting...
Yes, 100%. Right. Because I think that, look, the difference is Muhammad Mokaev is 22 years of age.
Correct.
And I do think that in some way, the UFC would love him to beat John Jones's record of being the youngest title winner in UFC history.
He's got a year to do it.
He's got a year to do it. And so if he goes out, smokes up Jafel Filo, which we don't know a ton.
Should do.
We don't know a ton about Jafel Filo, which means he probably should go out there and smoke him up a little bit. Well, then we've got an amazing win over Blaine O'Driscoll before he enters the UFC. We then have Cody Durden, who, he wraps up like a fucking snake real quick. He then gets the Charles Johnson win. He then finishes Malcolm Gordon after stopping to fuck around. If he goes out and blows out Jafel Filo in a couple of rounds, fine, no problem. That's fucking 4 finishes in 5 fights. You're going to see somebody with a big name next to him, for sure.
Match now.
It'll be a Matt Schnell, a Brandon Royval, a Kai Kara France, Amir Albazi, this, because he's been calling.
Some of those just feel too far to me right now.
Sure, but Kai Kara France accepted it on. I know this is Twitter, whatever. But Kai Kara France said,
"Of course he did.
Yeah, of course he did. Why not?
Of course he would.
Right,
get him now.
Right, but
3 years from now, Mo is obliterating fools.
Right, but my point is, like, if he goes out and blows Jafel Filo, the Kai Kara France is the loftiest of the lofty, fine.
Right,
but if he goes out and beats Kai Kara France, I mean, what are we doing? That, to me, you know what this feels like? You know what this feels like? This feels like Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley goes around beating up guys that he absolutely should have beaten up.
Right.
And then from nowhere,
fights Piotr Jan, and we're like,
is Piotr Jan. And you're like, wait.
Right. What you went from Haulian Paiva to Piotr Jan.
Yeah, with a little bit, with a
soupçon of Pedro Munoz in there.
Right. And you go, yeah, he's Piotr fucking Jan. And you're like, wait, what the fuck? And what happened?
I mean, it's the thing we want.
He goes and beats him.
It's the thing we want. It's the thing we ask. And I'm sure, having spoken to him last week, the Makhachev will come out with a name, with a target. He said he has made it clear that he wants to beat that record.
Yes. And
so he's got a year, and he wants to stay active.
Amir Albazi is not the way to do that. Amir Albazi is a fucking brilliant fighter. But if you go out and you've beat Amir Albazi, you can't then call for a title shot. You just can't.
Right. You have to go big.
You have to go big. And so go and shout for the
Matthias Nicolau, Brandon Royval, Kai Kara France.
Any of those three.
One of those three.
And the best one for that is Brandon Royval, by the way.
Yeah. Scrambly, not technical.
He destroys Brandon Royval.
Give you opportunities. Yeah. Opening fight of the night as we wrap up UFC Las Vegas. Carlston Harris defeats Jared Gooden by decision. Jared Gooden just isn't a guy that, to what we were saying about Josh Fremd and middleweight and Cedric Dumas, Jared Gooden just isn't a guy that is going to be at this level. I understand that he took it on short notice. All of those things. He missed weight by a colossal margin. He still fights with his hands down. He is not a guy that is capable of competing at this level. He is designed and built to be a superstar on the regional circuit. Carlston Harris is good. He is a perfect as a perfect veteran hand that is 3-1 in the division, as a guy that can face some of these up and comers, right? He's the guy that Shavkat fought to start last year that elevated him into the, okay, now we fight the Neil Magny's of the world. Carlston Harris is perfect as that guy.
My man said Carlston Harris is good.
he's
Stop right now. Carlston Harris is fine at best.
Okay. You want to get into a semantic argument about good and fine?
Correct.
Okay. Well, you're off the rails. The show has gone off the rails. My computer is apparently off the rails. Or doing rails. I don't know.
Yeah.
This was a good card overall. We got some really good fights. We got the bantamweight excitement that we expected. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all.
Look, I'll close on this. Gooden Harris was a stinker in my estimation. Josh Friend Dumas was a stinker. Carl Williams Bretsky was fine. I didn't have too much of a problem with it. It was whatever. Turkai, Petrino, both of those guys should be cut with their 50 grands and tell them to fuck all the way off. Krylov and Span equally cut them. But we talked about this offline a little bit, and I don't want to rehash this, but there's so many fights to get through in across all of the weeks that you watch a card that's 13 fights long. That's a lot of fights on a card.
It was going to be 14. Yep.
It was going to be 14. And you look at it and you say, fuck me, that's a lot of fights to get through. And when you're watching those fights, in a card of 13, there were 3 fights that we said were stinkers. And if you've only got 3 fights of 13 that are stinkers, that's a really good card.
Right.
But when you're watching it and you're watching sat there and you're like, fuck, I've got 8 fights to go. Like, it's such a slog. And so those three stinkers really slap a little bit different. But
and so what we said prior to hitting record, what I said with a friend yesterday and talking about what I did on my Saturday of sitting and watching 13 fights, it made sense to me during COVID when we were losing 2 and 3 and 4 fights on the run up to every fight card, because because athletes and their corners were testing positive and stuff was dropping off all the time. We had a couple events in that run that were 8 or 9 fight cards because we lost a bunch. We're no longer losing 2 and 3 and 4 fights per event. So even if you scale that back to 12 fights, to 11 fights, ideally 10 would be lovely. 5 main card, 5 prelims, but I don't think we're getting there. And so this is another one of those, like, you know, be realistic. If we can just get it to 12, then that makes it a little less, because even watching the event live on Saturday, there's a couple points where you can feel the time crunch. You can feel that they're even pressing themselves to get everything in within the windows that they have. And so everybody that wants to argue and yell and shout about, oh my God, so much studio time and why do we need all of these things? The other side is that we don't get any introductions of the athletes. We don't get any whatsoever. We just are into the next, into the next, into the next. And so if you pull 2 fights, go to 12 a week, 13 in some cases if you want, but we don't need to do any more 15s. We've had a card this year with 15. It's going to give you that little bit of space where it doesn't feel as long. It doesn't feel as heavy. The bad ones don't weigh as heavily as they often do. That also factors into like reorganizing fight cards, but that's a subject for a speaker's corner in the future again. But there's ways around this. Because as you said, if you get 13 fights and only 3 of them are ones where you're like, yeah, well, I could have done without that one. That means you had 10 pretty good to very good fights. I tell you what, I'd take that every Saturday. That'd be okay to me. I think we're going to get 10 or more pretty good fights this coming Saturday. UFC 286 touches down at the O2 in London. Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman, part 3. Co-main event, Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. We get Gunnar Nelson, Brian Barberena, Jennifer Maia, Casey O'Neill, Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze, Jack Shore's featherweight debut. Chris Duncan, Sam Patterson make their debut. Muhammad Makayev, who we talked about, returns. Christian Leroy Duncan makes his debut. LeBron Murphy, who you spoke to ahead of this event, remains on the card. Jake Hadley is back. Joanne Wood is back. Jai Herbert is back. Juliana Miller, who won the Ultimate Fighter last year, returns against Veronica Macedo, who is now Veronica Hardy. It's a good card. I look forward to discussing it with you later this week on the preview show. I'm excited. You excited?
I'm excited.
You look it. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for watching with us. Leave us any thoughts, comments, concerns, questions. I will update you on the state of my computer as I get some information. I will look into it because this scares the hell out of me when computers just do those things. But for now, we will leave you. He is Harry. I am Spencer. He is at BJJ_Harry Powell. Follow him. Follow all the lads. Sign up for the Severe Patreon, SevereMMA.com/pints. Follow me on Twitter at Spencer Kite. Know that we love you. Know that we appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.